Hi, welcome to our Noise Magazine podcast. My name is Bartosz Cieślak. My guest for this episode is Blake Connally, a musician you might be familiar with from the bands like Me and Him Call It Us, Then in the Dirt, or Infernal Coil. Hello, Blake. How are you doing?
I'm fine. How are you?
Terrific. We have a presidential election, so the future looks bright. It's been a while since you've been on the radar with any new music. What you've been up to these days, and how does your everyday life look like?
Well, it wasn't planned to be that way, but you know, released the last record I released was in 2018, and shortly after that, the world went crazy, and
Mhm.
uh, during that time, it was very uncertain what was going to happen, and a lot of my peers were talking about maybe doing, like, what do you call it, over Skype,
Mhm.
or just like a studio project that's over, everybody's in a different place and
Mhm.
that kind of thing. Which for me was very difficult to get inspired, and try to create that energy just by myself. So it was slow going, but I did have a project that I wrote, um, several songs for, with musicians around the country, and still kind of in the in the demo phase. But in that time, I also faced severe health challenges, and also in that time, I became a father of two boys, and that's kind of overshadowed those two
Definitely.
giant things have kind of overshadowed, um, my ability to carve out any time for myself, let alone um, getting into a realm of creativity. So, um, but the boys are going to be two, and so I'm thinking, maybe in a year or so, I can start to peel away and carve out some time for myself. But for now, that's kind of where my life has gone.
Is any of your projects, past or present, even potentially active these days?
Infernal Coil will never be done. Um,
Hmm.
uh, you know, there were lineup changes, and a lot of tumultuousness during the later years of that project. Around that 2018, 2019. Um, and so, yeah, I definitely intend to. I have a lot of ideas for that project going forward. But at the same time, this uh, interview is helping me talk myself down from the ledge of maybe giving it up. So it's. I mean, I get asked multiple times a week from various people when I'm going to do something again with music, and so it helps keep the embers glowing a little bit, to not let the fire completely go out. But it's yeah, I think Infernal Coil definitely, and even Me and Him, Aaron, um, has really been. He also recently became a father, and I think where our lives are kind of, it's easier to communicate and understand, timing if someone's in the same life path as you. Um, so we talked about potentially either doing a new project or, maybe something under that name. But, he's helped release a lot of stuff that we had never released before, over the past years. And so that's a possibility as well.
If you had an album to record today, what music would it be? Would it be death metal?
And that's the thing. I didn't. It's not something I really set out to do. Death metal. It's more so just the way my voice is now. I mean, that's such a signifier between the two genre. Black and death is the vocal style and tuning. But yeah, I'm not super confident in my high range vocals, so I have to go low, and so thus I guess it is more in the death metal category. But I the band that the project that I was working on during the pandemic is more mid tempo and sad. That was kind of the main focus, is to be more like desperate and sad sounding. Still very, very heavy, but more mid tempo, which is something I, in my career, have always tried to stay as far away from as possible. I always want to be as fast as possible. So it was just a new strategy and a new color to play with. So
Will we ever get to hear it?
I really hope so. I think it's good, and I think that people would be very surprised to know who's in the band, but that has to be kept secret for now. But
Okay.
there was I'm not sure if he remembers, but during the pandemic, I also reached out to Patrick from Blinded. Because I've always been a big fan of his, and
I'll make sure he listens to it.
yeah. So there was talks of us collaborating at one point. So maybe something in the future.
I know life as a father of two is challenging, but do you actually miss touring with all the inconveniences and?
That's a great question. No, I do not miss touring. I did really enjoy connecting with people and playing live. But everything else really started to take a toll on me. It's, as you age and mature, it's like my mom used to say this thing, like, you reach a point where you're working on your home life to where you get your home exactly the way that you want it. And then when you have to leave it, everything else is substandard to what, your house is.
Absolutely.
So like, like even down to like your pillow and things like this, like, oh, like these hotel pillows are not as good as what I have at home. It's like silly, but all of those things like add up. And, I'm still very humble. But it started to become very trying for me, because I never really got to the level of some of my peers that were able to stay in nicer hotels every night and eat really good food and things like this. It was like it was pretty low tier, as they say.
There's nothing stupid about what you said. If your home is not the best place in the world, what's the point in having a home?
Yeah, that's very true. But yeah, there are elements that I miss about touring, but it's always been for me it's like a necessity. It's the only reason. I really believe it's like the only reason why you and I are talking right now. If I would have never put in the hard work, I would have been like every other guy that thought that he could just put a demo on YouTube, and then you have to put the work in and time in and suffer to reap whatever reward there is. So,
but you kind of enjoyed traveling as such.
Oh yeah, I love traveling.
We actually met during one of your travels.
Right, yeah. No, I love traveling. that's again, you're a little bit more, there's freedom, you're not having to like be on
Stick to the
schedule.
schedule, yeah.
Yeah. So, but I do love traveling.
Is it true that your first CD with a loud guitar-based music was something you actually found on your backyard?
Yes. Yeah. That was I mean, we had like a rock station on the radio when I was growing up.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's how old I am. How old we are is that we remember the radio. But yeah, no, I was playing in my yard. I didn't have like you know, a huge house or a huge yard, but it was like, there was like a rough part where it was, a lot of trees. And I was just digging around, being a kid. I was probably, I don't know, maybe 6 or 7 at the time. And there was like a shiny thing in the mud. And I pulled it out, and it was a Helmet Meantime CD. And I thought that was super cool just to find a CD. And I had no idea what it sounded like. And I put it in, and, just being a kid, you're like, oh yeah, this is like my music because I found it. And, you just take ownership of it.
Mm-hmm.
You force yourself to like it because you want it to be cool. But truthfully, it's, become like a huge influence. Helmet.
It's a great record.
It is a great record. So the fact that somebody bought it, I mean, the only plausible, idea is that someone in the neighborhood had bought it, didn't like it, and threw it out the record, out the car, or someone else didn't like it and threw it out the car. But that's the only way it would have managed to find its way there. So,
what was your actual connection to the hardcore scene in terms of being an artist? I mean, did you really feel that this was the platform where you might meet your ambitions, your expectations, and be fulfilled as an artist?
I think for me, the aspect was, it took a lot of the fantasy out of the culture.
Mm-hmm.
I was, I'll probably get crucified for this, but like,
Yeah, whatever.
I never did like Dungeons and Dragons, or, things like this, or, like typical young metalhead type things,
Mm-hmm.
uh, and, and it always was like I was like skating when they were doing that. And then, like more, I didn't really know that. And then, a lot of it was like based on, alcohol and like, drugs and things like that. And that didn't really interest me either,
Mm-hmm.
at a young age. And so hardcore kind of had an alternative for those themes, but it still had the aggression and the urgency, and it was more based in social political things. And then that's kind of what drew me in. But I left it pretty quickly because of how inconsistent and, what's the word? The they were It was a bunch of old guys that, you look up to because they're older than you, but they're actually like, not great people, and
Mm-hmm.
in the world, and you kind of pick up on that. And then I left that scene pretty quickly, once I realized that they were all kind of full of shit, and they weren't really about anything. They just liked having younger kids. I mean, it's like kind of despicable. Like you
Mm-hmm.
have these like, you know, 13, 14, 15-year olds that are like looking up to you, and you're like, yeah, I'm really cool. I'm like the cool guy because these young kids are, fawning over me. But
There's this concept of never meet your idols.
right. Yes. Right. I've definitely been a victim of that. But yeah, no, I think that's the real thing. And it also, the ethic. I mean, In my coming up, the metal kids were still having this like antiquated thought that, you play a show and there's a talent scout at the show and that you're going to get your big break. Like that's the way they thought. And, obviously that's not real. But, the punk and hardcore kids were like, no, you just go out and earn it. You just tour as hard as you can and market yourself as hard as you can. And that's how you get somewhere. So I learned a lot, but it was inevitably not really for me.
You already mentioned Me and Him Call It Us, and it seems that this chapter might not be completely over yet, but are you happy with what's left of this band, which is like 3 albums, if I'm correct, like an hour of music overall?
Yeah.
Semi-pioneering status, dozen of bands who followed?
I mean, I never really thought that would take hold the way that it did, but I mean, even on the ending, the internet was and music sharing was really starting to like get variety. You had like Pure Volume, the rise of Last FM was like towards the end. All of these things were coming up where you could see who was listening to you. And I was thinking like, oh, there's guys in Russia like listening to this and like and enjoying it and sending us messages then. And so I just kind of let it go. But to answer your question, I think it was a time and place, and I think it's really easy for a lot of people who were doing other things. I think about people like Nergal from Behemoth, doing Behemoth since he's 14 years old. And like that's been his whole life is like this one band, I'm the guy, and like choosing that genre to be. Not all of us have that same journey, and not all of us are able to just like focus in and find who we are right then and there at 14, super young. But I think for me, it was, again, heavily toured during that band. And I learned a lot about myself and the world during that time. But the music itself is not something that I really felt like is something that, I mean, it's who, during the time it was great, but in hindsight, it's not something that I'm really like stoked on, there are elements of it, especially the later pieces when we started to kind of mature a bit. But I mean, I was in a band before Me and Him that, I guess was more mature than Me and Him. But, that we didn't tour with that band. So not many people know about it.
What do you mean by more mature?
I think, when me and Aaron were doing Me and Him, it was kind of like trying to be, I don't know, kind of like
everything everywhere at the same time.
I guess. Yeah. I mean, it's like, it's bands like The Locust that we looked up to and Daughters,
Daughters, definitely.
Those kinds of bands that were born out of like, if you're like in a pinball machine and you're just being bounced around between all of these different genres and you just find this one path where it's like, you're going to make everybody upset with what you're doing, and that's what we were like, oh, that's what we want to do, is just make everybody upset. I mean, we're not going to fit on any traditional bill, outside of being an aggressive, loud band, there's really no similarity, So.
And how do you feel about this modern day metalcore being a big thing these days? Do you feel that your old albums like C Drive of Love Stories bear any connection to this style and what's happening these days?
I have to be honest with you. I
That's why we're here.
I around the time that Spirit Box really blew up, it got to me where I remember distinctly seeing a music video for, I think it's a song called Constance. Anyway, I remember seeing that music video and it just kind of dawned on me where I was like, fuck, like, my suffering and like a lot of my peers' suffering really paved the way for a lot of these bands to be able to now tour with Limp Bizkit and, and do these gigantic big tours, and I'm not even going to say that Me and Him is anywhere close to as good as Spirit Box musically or market wise, but they were they were part of the I Wrestled a Bear Once band, and I mean that's like a completely direct, like adjacent to that style. And so I think to myself, like, if we were to have stuck it out, would we be like able to hang in that or not? But I think it's kind of wild to live in the timeline where that's now like resurging. That metalcore, or I don't even know what you call it. That style of music is now popular again. Even like new metal is like coming back again, and like things like this. So it's weird. It's a weird thing. I really don't know. I would never be able to know what people see in it now. Whatever, if it's like nostalgia, maybe, or something. I don't know.
It's an ever-growing cycle of nostalgia. Time is a flat circle. Everything that's happened will happen again. That's basically it.
Yeah, sure.
You had a great start with Dead in the Dirt. You had a great EP, a great album, which were released in Southern Lord, which has been a big label around that time. It was also a good time for this type of sort of metalish hardcore. And almost all the bands from that era, like Trap Them, like Baptists, like All Pigs Must Die, they released another albums. And Dead in the Dirt somewhat dissolved after the debut album. Why? Why did it happen?
I reconnected with Bo, who played bass in that band, around the time that I got really sick. And we had a really long conversation about a lot of those things, and kind of having a pull back of like where did it go wrong, what happened. And I really think that Hank, the drummer, was also in Foundation, and him, and he had gotten into Foundation really young. I think that he started to play in Foundation when he was 15, and so he kind of saw them rise up. He was able to get them to rise up, because he brought, I mean, a lot of people don't give him enough credit, because he really, what people know of Foundation now is all, in my opinion, really thanks to what Hank brought to the band. He is a phenomenal musician, and has like just boundless ideas, and especially in composition, it's just phenomenal. And I think that that's what brought Foundation up above, and with that, you're 15, and you're touring. I mean, they went everywhere. I mean, they toured Russia, they toured Japan multiple times. I mean, everywhere. Australia. I mean, pretty much everywhere outside of Africa, I think, is if they've been. And so he was balancing that, and then Dead in the Dirt started to take off as well, and it was like the touring schedule was so great that I think he just was like, again, he just wanted to be home. And also trying to balance egos and who's in charge and who's writing and who does what, the decision making process on writing and band decisions. It was constantly like tumultuous. And so we did a big tour. Our final, what we didn't know at the time was our final tour, but we did a full Europe back to back with a full Southeast Asia tour. And I think that it just kind of killed the band because we just toured so hard that like everybody just didn't like everybody at the end of it. And when you're young and immature, you just are like, I quit, I quit. I don't want to do it anymore. They couldn't see the outside perspective of like how rare it is that we were able to create what we could create, have the, affiliation with Southern Lord, have the opportunities of, connecting with the tour bookers and things like this. So it was easier just to let it go, which sad to me, because it's not even really that I, lost the band. It's I lost them as friends as well, which is always like not a good thing, So, but yeah, that's basically what happened.
Don't you feel that the end came a bit too early? That there was some music to be released?
I would like to think so. Yeah, I think it would be really difficult for me specifically now to go and do that again. But I do think that it was premature. I mean, we had a lot slated when we got home. I mean, we were supposed to play like Fluff Fest, which was really big at the time. I don't know what the status is of it now, but then a lot of festivals the following year. And I wanted to start writing pretty much immediately as we got home, and that's when it was like, we just got home. We don't want to do it, and so. But yeah, I do think it was premature.
Why did it took two hardcore bands to get you to play metal finally? Form a proper death metal band and record a proper death metal album.
Right.
Is it your despise towards Dungeons and Dragons you already mentioned?
I mean, like I'm very happy with what I created in Dead in the Dirt. I mean, I'm a crust punk at heart, so I mean, His Hero Is Gone is like one of my top 5.
Mm-hmm.
Drop Dead is in my top 3 of all time, and even like the ethos of like Corrupted, even though it's doom, it's still like very socio-political, crust punk-esque. And so I think what took me so long is, it's just getting to the point of like, okay, I've made this band and I've accomplished this. Now I've made this band and accomplished this. And really it was like speed was the last thing that I really wanted. I was like, I felt bad. It's like the same thing with Magruder Grind, when they first got together, Chris Moore, couldn't really hold the blast like he does now, and it was like forced on him, like faster. And he was able to and wanted to do it. But Hank, I think was always kind of like seeing it as a negative, like, oh man, I'm playing as fast as I can. And Blake's always yelling at me to go faster. And this kind of thing. But that was the main thing that I wanted to do with playing in a metal band is to be full speed as fast as possible.
Was it difficult to find the right people to play this kind of music?
Surprisingly, no. The guy that Brennan, who played drums on those records, lived in Georgia, and was a fan of Dead in the Dirt before. I mean, he's significantly younger than me, but he wanted it. I mean, he was super hungry to do everything, to tour, to write as fast as possible, to push, physically.
Mm-hmm.
And so he kind of just was there. He like appeared immediately, like as soon as that band dissolved, and we became fast friends. So,
But was Infernal Coil an actual band, like a power trio, or the bass player and the drummer were there to perform what you have already written and arranged?
um, I always have looked up to. I've always thought that the best writing style for metal bands is to have a nucleus. Bands like Satyricon are a perfect example where,
Mm-hmm.
you know, they're both in charge of composition, but, the main guy, and then this type of music, it's going to be guitar driven. So whoever the guitarist is going to come up with the idea, um, the feeling of the song, and then the composition is hashed out in practice. But when we were writing, that's how we wrote. Me and Brennan would work on everything and then present it to the other guys, um, to learn and to, inevitably put their own touches on, but the bulk of it was done by me and Brennan,
Mm-hmm.
which I think is very effective because it's easy to balance ego and spotlight and, who does what and why. There's not too many cooks in the kitchen.
Mm-hmm. But the live lineup differed from the one that recorded the album. I mean, maybe it wasn't an ever revolving door of session musicians, but it did differ. Am I right?
Yeah. I mean, it's something that I've struggled with my whole music career is, knowing my own limitations. I hear everything and want to do everything, but I can't. And so I have to stub out, people to fill in what I can't do. And so, you know, having a bass player is a necessity, having a second guitar player is a necessity for that project.
Mm-hmm.
And it made me very uncomfortable, to be completely honest, to have that, to let go and say, hey, I can't do everything, and to have to rely on other people is challenging.
Was the second guitarist absolutely essential for you to perform live?
For live, yeah, definitely. Yeah. I mean, there is a lot of dynamics, and that's another thing that Dead in the Dirt and me and him had some dynamics for sure, but as we progressed, it kind of faded away. But having dynamics, I needed that additional support. So,
Death metal as a genre is a spectrum, and there's everything from Portal to Acheron to Cannibal Corpse to Dying Fetus. And Infernal Coil, I guess, differs from the sort of death metal you listened to as a young person. I mean, it doesn't sound like Cannibal Corpse. It's not Morbid Angel-esque. What shaped this sound, and what kind of death metal did you want it to be?
Portal is a big influence.
Uh huh.
Yeah, that deconstructionism of the genre
Uh
has
huh.
always been tantalizing to me. I also think that, like, I also like, finding, um, influences in things that people would never, or make other people uncomfortable, that like that's similar, and
Such as.
well, for I'll say for me, I'm a giant Ingawan Ring fan, which is like a neo folk band from America.
Mm-hmm.
Those who don't know, but I mean,
Great band.
he's a great, yeah. I mean, phenomenal. I mean, all around. But um, I was listening to the Glinting Spade like on repeat during that that writing process. There's a lot of influence in there, and then also Prurient, which is again top 5 most important musicians for me.
You mean the Power Electronics Prurient or the Bermuda Drain album Prurient?
Right. It was I was listening to Black Vase
Okay.
and Annihilationist, those records specifically. But even the elements of Bermuda Drain as well. And I think that he's just like so underappreciated. Pretty much life changing for me when I first discovered him, and so it's been kind of a ever present influence, but more easily kind of linear. Titan Blood was also a giant influence for that record and project. Just the like relentless aspect of, I mean, they really could do a masterclass on composition and just like the artistic ethos of a band. And again, a 2-piece, a nucleus where there's no ego, the egos are balanced and everybody has their part and they don't have to fight for the spotlight, But yeah, those are probably the biggest influences of that time.
Mm-hmm. I know you are not too fond of associating Infernal Coil with so-called war metal, but there is a cavemanish, like primeval factor to your music, and I'm sure you will agree to that.
Oh yeah.
Which is, I mean, this music is so intense to the point of non-musicality. Even a friend of mine said he hasn't heard many as intense albums as Within a World Forgotten, maybe since Temple of Knowledge by Cataclysm.
Wow, that's a very high compliment. I much appreciated. Yeah, I could see the war metal aspect of it for sure. That was the intensity is also something that I feel like traditional death metal really lacks. I think a lot of people would be like, "What are you talking about?" But I mean, it's like it's really a lot of it feels very theatric and like rehearsed. There's not a lot of raw emotion, raw anger, passion in death metal. It's very polished and very, again, yeah, like theatric and rehearsed, and so I think that if you are playing that kind of music, it's like, why are you doing it? I mean, if you're not trying to hurt someone, or create some sort of response, from another person. I mean, it's kind of the point, in my opinion. I don't really like the noodling. The guitar like noodling is bothered me. So
Within a World Forgotten is perfect to the point of even the intro is perfect. This half-second long inhale.
yeah,
Why did you leave it there?
it was very intentional. I mean, it's just like in the real life when you're about to get yelled at by somebody. That's the first thing you hear, and you're like, "Oh shit," you know. But yeah, it's very intentional to leave it there and to have it start with that. I honestly think that we may have ripped it off from a Revenge song. I'm not. I'm almost. I can't place which song, but I think that's where we got the idea of it. But
They are all the same anyway.
yes, that's very true. Yeah, that's very true.
No, just kidding. In another interview, you said that it was the first album when you actually consider yourself a proper lyricist. What was the intention behind those lyrics?
I always, in Dead in the Dirt, the songs were short, and so it was really hard to. I really had to like water down and make everything very concise, and even the lyrical content I was like, well, I can't really say what I want to say in 10 seconds, 20 seconds, Um, and so the intent, I guess, was to just go as deep as possible, as I could. I mean, the subject matter is a lot more um, theoretical or like philosophical rather than straight to the point and blunt. Um, but I did want it to be challenging. But I also hate, and I hate the same thing in poetry too, where it sometimes when it's so, the English word of verbose, which is uh, when it's so verbose that like it feels almost like pretentious, and you're like, what are you even saying at this point? You're just using big words just as, to sound a certain way. That bothers me. But I I've also, this is probably not part of the answer to the question, but I also feel that way in most metal, is that the lyrics are really like an afterthought. Like, I don't think many people care about the lyrics. And I think it's dangerous for the listeners who do care about the lyrics to put as much stake as they do into bands' lyrics that really don't give a shit, I think it's really like, because these kids are like coming into it and being like, oh man, like this is like, they're locking on to this stuff that like some drunk guy, is like, this sounds cool, you know. It's
Mhm.
really dangerous to like put that out there without any sort of like, nobody cares about the lyrics, And I'll say, same thing, like blinded lyrics. I mean, that's like a great example of people who have thought put into the lyrics, and real ideas and real concepts and something to actually communicate. So that's really my intent, was to just create something that was that somebody could actually lock onto if they wanted to.
Mhm. Was your performance on the Fire in the Mountains festival as magical as the recording suggests? The one that's on YouTube?
I would say so, and I'm gonna be brutally honest, as I think that we really lucked out, because I think that's going to be the best Fire in the Mountains that's ever been, because it was a perfect balance of professionalism with kind of chaos, and like we're breaking rules and pushing boundaries. Whereas the ones that I've seen subsequently, like they have like the big stage and it's becoming more like European with like the
Mm-hmm.
visors and like the lights, and it kind of takes away from the whole aspect of the having that backdrop when you're getting these light shows blasted in your eyes, when the the mountains and the sun are that's the whole point, in my opinion. So I honestly think that particular one that we played may have been one of the best that one will be. And now, if for anyone who's not following that, they've been kind of, from my understanding, shut out of Wyoming. They have to now have it in Montana now, which is still great, still cool. But the Tetons are a very special place in America, and the fact that they were able to pull that off is, I still think, is incredible. But it was very magical. We played second or third. Aerial Ruin played right before us, and I thought that was a perfect juxtaposition. I'm a big fan, and I mean, it was full. I mean, it was right at around noon, so it was like full sun overhead, and that was very fun. I was terribly ill that day. I had like a double ear infection. I was coughing my brains out. I felt I had like 104 fever. Um, but and I mean, I barely had a voice driving. I was able to eke my way through the set, but I couldn't speak for a week. I had no voice after it. So,
Do you feel that the sound guys on your concerts generally understood your music and what it required?
and that was one of the things, like, going forward, we always wanted to have somebody that would travel with us. It's
Mm-hmm.
just, it's expensive to take care of a whole other person to bring along and, want to do it.
Mm-hmm.
But I think for the most part, because of where we were playing, like the types of clubs, I think that for the most part they got it pretty good. And then sometimes you'd be surprised. I mean, who um, really got it. I remember us doing a tour on the first day with Sumac, and we were playing in a city I'd never played in, Iowa, which is, it's got its own metal scene, but it's still very um, behind in a lot of ways. But the house sound guy was like in his mid 60s, and I mean, he was pretty old for that job, and but he was a professional, and listened and was like, okay, you guys want to do that? That's fine. I mean, it was a good mix, but I think they kind of understood it, but I think they
Mm-hmm.
were also annoyed at how much stage volume I normally bring. So,
How come that there was no second Infernal Coil album like 2 years after the first one? Was it only about the pandemics?
pretty much, yeah, that really was it. I mean, I I had every intent to just continue the same momentum, and I took a little break in 2019 when I saw you.
Mm-hmm.
I took a little break and was kind of trying to plan the next move. But then, yeah, when 2020 hit, it was kind of just like, how am I going to do this? I did I did, and I'm one of the few people now that still take it very seriously. So um, it's not what everybody wants it to be. So
Mm-hmm. Do you think that there is a cult following waiting for you out there if you're reunited?
I'd love to think so. That would be very cool. But I'm at the point in my life now where I think I care less and less about it, and I'm getting to that point of being like a hermit black metal guy, where I'll just write music and put it out, and if somebody listens to it, that's great. But if not, no big deal. But I would love that. I would love if people were receptive and interested in it.
There's this legend circulating about the guy from Judas Iscariot. You know the
Oh,
band Judas
yeah, absolutely.
Iscariot. So there's this legend about this guy that he actually records new music constantly, but he's got his drummer. They meet, they work on the music, they record it, they hand themselves two copies of CDs, and that's it. They just they don't release it, they don't share it, they just do it for themselves. I'm not. I choose to believe it because it sounds cool.
Yeah, for sure. I don't know if I would go that far. I still want to. My whole point of ever doing music is to reach other people. So I think I would still like to try to release it, but I also am I also am kind of tired of labels as well. I think if I ever do anything else, I'll probably just self-release everything. Um, I
What's wrong about labels? I mean, it's the best way to reach people if someone's doing their legwork.
that's what's aggravating, is like,
Uh-huh.
that's the, it is, you're absolutely right that that's the best way, but they there's too many added layers. I mean, there were people that, even at Southern Lord's level back then,
Mm-hmm.
that we were shut out of opportunities just because we were affiliated with that label.
Okay.
And you know, there, although what are they, how big of a deal is it, who knows, but you know, they're their own people and they make their own enemies as well as friends. And so it becomes like, oh, now just because I'm on this label, I have to like keep an eye on what you're doing and what, you know, is it going to affect me later, and that whole thing. And that bothers me. And it also bothers me of like the weird like ownership of the music, and like how they feel like almost entitled because they're doing what they're supposed to. Like, I don't know. I don't think I'm the only musician that it's felt this way.
Okay.
But
With all the little time you have for yourself, what are your habits as a listener these days? Do you stick to the old classics or look for new stuff?
I love nothing more than finding anything that I'm like, wow, this is good.
Mm-hmm.
Because 99% of the time I'm like, this is absolute fucking garbage. And
Okay.
and I can't believe that someone said, "Oh, you'd really like this," or that anyone is like at all inspired or giving credit. It's like I feel that with all media. I think movies also have gone downhill. Publications, books have gone downhill. I mean, it's really the state of the world is crazy in that way. But no, I love to find new music. It's just very very rare. And my listening habits, I mean, that's kind of that. I mean, that's my own little thing. Luckily, I have a job where I can listen to headphones all day, and so that gets me through the day. I mean, I
Mm-hmm.
have headphones in all day.
And what's been spinning in your headphones recently?
I have to look it up because I have to. My brain with children makes your brain just mush. Um, let's see, who can I give note to? Uh, I have been listening to. I recently found out about a duo grindcore band from LA called Shit Brains,
Mm-hmm.
like
Okay.
Euro stop and go style. And they're really fucking good. Great production, the composition's great. Um, the Lust for Youth and Croatian Amor collab record was also really good. That recently came out. I've also been listening to Greek Orthodox hymns pretty much every day.
Okay.
Um, it's fucking good, man. It's like it really is like a. It really is. It's like the Hate Forest battlefield. They're not. Is it battlefields with the?
Battlefields.
Yeah, yeah. With the you know, the Ukrainian folk
That's the one.
arts. Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's like that kind of scratching the itch, you know, of that style. And there's a band from the Pacific Northwest called Misery Whip. It's like death metal. It kind of sounds like if hardcore dudes tried to play Disma. I'm looking forward to the new Psycho Frame record, which, you know, in the terms of like rehashed metalcore in that era, I think they're doing it the right way, and I think it's, you know, actually engaging.
Mhm.
But yeah, I mean, it's mostly black metal, and the Orthodox hymns are kind of the ever present, and then Euro or, you know, Danish electro is like three main genres I'm listening to at the moment. But it's hard to find. I mean, it's ever, like I said, it's really really difficult to find stuff that I'm like, and even some of those records I mentioned, I'm like, they're not like 100% like this is, I love this, you know, it's just something better than the worst thing I've ever heard.
I mean, it takes time to love
Yeah.
something. Actually, maybe in
Yeah,
10
that's
years you will remember them like better.
Yeah, we'll see. Yeah, we'll see about that. But I agree with you. It does take time for it to go.
Thank you for this terrific conversation.
Oh yes,
Hope
thank
to
you.
hear from you soon.
Absolutely. Thank you.